Traffic jam was sizable, impenetrable, hours long and kilometers long. We got stuck, the driver said, lighting a cigarette, turning off the engine and turning to me. In too much of a hurry. I shrugged vaguely. That's right. The taxi driver interpreted my gesture somewhat in his own way. Traffic is just that. No matter how nervous you are, it won't get you anywhere any faster. You'll only make a mess of things, so it's better to relax and talk about something else entirely. He seemed to be the kind of philanderer who's happy to chat for hours, just so long as he has someone to listen to. However, in the current situation, it wasn't too annoying, at least for now. So what do you say you do for a living? He asked, although I hadn't said anything of the sort. Well, you could say I'm a writer, I blurted out, completely without thinking. You know, I love to pull the wool over people's eyes. Well, I've never driven artists before. The taxi driver's tone was such that I, a professional liar, felt embarrassed, feeling like an imposter. What do you write about? Detective stories, novels, or what? Well, I hesitated. A little bit of everything. Folklore, thrillers. Who made me talk? At least I don't know how to blush. Oh, a thriller. The driver perked up even more. Listen, I can tell you a couple of interesting stories, if you want, completely free. And without waiting for my consent, he began telling me. I used to drive a taxi too, back when the USSR was still in existence. I've got quite a track record. Well, there was this driver working at our 5th taxi company. He had an old name, a rare one, Carton. These days, you'd only find something like that in remote villages. Well, the guys quickly changed him to Baraton, and then shortened him to Barry, like Alibasov. Well, he didn't take it personally. We had all sorts of nicknames in our taxi company, and when that idiot Gorbak started his damn perestroika, everyone started doing whatever they could. And taxi drivers don't have much choice. The bolder ones started drinking vodka and hooking up, or some other illegal immigrant. And those who didn't want to get involved in that just worked overtime. So one day, Barry was quietly driving around at night. He picked up a guy. The guy told him the address, Skuratovskaya Square. Barry blinked and froze. He didn't know the whole city. He'd been driving taxis for a little over a year by then. Do you know the way? He said. Of course, the man replied. It's not far. They set off, and, as often happens when a clueless passenger starts giving directions, they ended up in the middle of nowhere. Barry quickly lost all sense of direction. It was still foggy, and he couldn't see a thing. There were no residential buildings, just some industrial area, warehouses and fences. They somehow made it to the river. Then the passenger perked up. There it is, he shouted. The bridge. And beyond the bridge, along the alley, it's just 2 blocks to the square. Well, we got there. The passenger paid and tacked on a hefty surcharge for wandering around. Barry turned around and heading back to familiar places. And any taxi driver, or any good driver in general, when he finds himself in an unfamiliar place, always has this habit, to note as many landmarks as possible, so that the second time he finds himself there, he won't get lost. So Baritone drove on, scanning for other turns, traffic lights, parking lots, stores, and other landmarks. But nothing really stood out. It was late, and the lighting was terrible. The windows were all dark, and the stores, if there were any, were all closed. There weren't any 24-hour shops back then. The streets were empty. No cars either. Only as he approached the bridge did he notice the street name, Novopogostov Boulevard. It jarred Barry, but he didn't pay it much mind. He'd seen worse street names. He quickly found his way back to familiar places, and he would have forgotten the whole thing if he hadn't found himself in the same area a week later. He was driving an engineer to a factory somewhere, and then he drove along the river and found himself on a familiar embankment. But he couldn't find the bridge, no matter how much he searched the embankment. Everything seemed the same. All the landmarks were still there. The exit to the river, the old bus stop, the piles of rusty iron. But the bridge was as if it had never been there. He then returned to the park and immediately looked at the detailed city map the dispatchers had on the wall. And guess what? It was gone. Not only was there no bridge, Novopogostovo Boulevard was gone. Neither the boulevard nor the square were anywhere to be seen. Barik should have been wary, but he chalked it all up to fatigue and lack of sleep. He decided he'd imagined it all, and then, about 2 months later, he picked up a tipsy couple at a late-night party, and they decided to just cruise around town. Whatever. A couple of times, they stopped at quiet corners and let Barry out for 20 minutes to smoke. Okay, so that's understandable, right? And so, after another such smoke break, they were driving along the edge of the park. It was pitch black. On one side was a concrete wall holding up the park embankment. On the other, a parapet. And beyond that, the river. And then a girl yelled, "Turn into the tunnel. I want to go there." Karaton looked. It was definitely a tunnel in the concrete wall. It was dimly lit, but clearly not a solid one. There were markings, a sign, and everything. They dove in. The tunnel made a clever turn around and down, and then led them up into some neighborhood. The passengers were laughing, practically drooling with delight. Barry glanced at the sign on the corner. Holy shit. Skuratovskaya Square. And the passenger, a guy, said, "Stop here, boss. We'll get off." Barry felt a little uneasy. "Should I wait for you?" he asked. "No," they said. "No. We'll just walk the rest of the way." And they giggled like idiots. Well, Barry shrugged and decided to check out that bridge. He found the turnoff onto Novopogostov Boulevard, drove to the end, and reached the bridge. He stopped, almost wanting to get out and take a closer look at what all this was going on, even grabbing the door handle. But at the last moment, he suddenly realized he really didn't want to get out of the car in this area. He shuddered all over. He stepped on the gas and drove across the bridge. That's when he stopped, got out calmly, and took a good look at the bridge. The embankment was just an embankment. The river was just a river. The bridge was just a bridge. Everything was in place. No tricky machinery anywhere. And then I looked around. and was stunned. The bridge with the river and the neighborhood beyond it were there, just like last time. But this bank was completely different. There was no bus stop, no stacks of wood, no factory fences, no industrial zone itself. Just a huge vacant lot in both directions. And across it, in the middle, a road from the bridge stretched into the darkness. An ordinary 2-lane asphalt road, and nothing else. It was like some kind of obsession. Okay, I followed the road. If there was a road, it must lead somewhere. Lo and behold, the vacant lot gradually turned into a landfill, a huge one. It must be the main city road. And beyond, the highway was already glowing. And from there, the edge of the city was visible. So Barak had driven to the opposite outskirts of the city. And that couldn't be right. He wouldn't have had enough gas in his tank for such a detour. What a disaster. And then he stopped by that strange neighborhood a couple more times. And each time, who knows where he ended up. He didn't tell everyone about this mess. Instead, he went to see Philemonic. And Philemonic is a real veteran of our taxi business. Rumor has it he started out as a cab driver in a horse-drawn carriage. Whether true or not, if anyone knew anything, it was him. So Barak came to Philemonic, got properly drunk, and told him everything as it was. Philemonic shook his head and said, "Oh, you're lucky, my dear. You must have been born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You've been in the dead district after all." Carrington was taken aback. He asked, "What kind of district is this?" Well, in every city where great atrocities happen, something like this starts. First, a small room or basement in a house that never had a basement. You've probably heard of that. Out of nowhere, a door appears in the wall. Somebody walks through that door and vanishes forever, and the door with them. And then it pops up somewhere else, and after that small room, lo and behold, a wandering house starts up in the city with the same diagnosis. And the bigger the city, the more atrocities there are. And this plague's appetite grows, it seems. First a small house, then a street, and then a neighborhood. And that can even grow into a district. We've had this ghost town in our city for a long time now. 100, maybe 200 years. It appears and then disappears. But why? What do you mean, why? How stupid of you. The city grows and the neighborhood grows. It gets new houses, new living space. It needs new tenants, so the apartments don't sit empty. So it lures living souls to itself. And the fact that you manage to visit there more than once and even escape alive is incredibly lucky. If I were you, I'd light a candle to God in church for such good fortune. A meter-long candle as thick as a foot. And under no circumstances, no matter the cost, would I ever drive to unfamiliar addresses again. Barak decided to do just that. He swore off driving anywhere at night until he was sure the address was in a real neighborhood. Back then, there were no GPS devices. Hear an unfamiliar name. Get out your map and swipe until you find it. And not every passenger would agree with such a tedious approach. So, financially, Barak's situation wasn't looking good. And as luck would have it, problems piled up, one worse than the other. He was blamed for an accident The local gangsters disliked him, and while changing a tire in the cold, he seriously injured his right hand. Basically, one thing after another. And everywhere you need money, and a lot of it. All these hassles began to sour Barrick's character. He couldn't think of anything else but hitting money. And gradually, he descended into the same shady dealings he'd once avoided, like the devil from incense. Booze and prostitutes quickly became mere trifles. Rumor had it Barrick had turned to criminal activity. He'd been transporting weapons, drugs, even corpses wherever needed. Of course, no one caught him red-handed, but the men wouldn't gossip about it. He used to be a cheerful guy, loved to joke around with people, and could easily grab a drink with his colleagues after shift. But then he became unsociable, spiteful. He basically went bad, and somehow, imperceptibly, they started calling Barry Kari. We didn't really care. He went bad, so be it. As long as he didn't interfere with other people's lives, no great loss. We won't be baptizing our children with him. But when underage girls started turning up in ditches all over the city, raped and brutally murdered, Fyodor, one of our guys, a principled man, a big guy, approached Kari and told him straight to his face, "If I find out you're somehow involved with these girls, pray," he said. And a couple of days later, Fyodor crashed and died. The steering failed. Again, there was no clear evidence, but everyone realized it was Karya's doing. Obviously, everyone turned their backs on this bastard, and it seemed like that was exactly what he wanted. He was tinkering around with his filth right next to us and didn't give a damn. The bosses turned a blind eye to all his misdeeds. He must have been feeding them, either himself or his murderous buddies. And then, one evening, a call came in at the control center, from the departure point to the train station. Karya turned out to be the closest. He took it and drove up. There was a guy standing on the side of the road. The lights weren't working. You couldn't see a thing. A dark silhouette, and that was it. He got in the bag, and as luck would have it, Karya's light bulb died. So the black guy got in and sat there, silent, like he was keeping his mouth shut. Karya said to him, "So, sir, are we going to the station?" And the other said to him, "Just go straight ahead for now." Karya drove a bit and then said again, "At least be more specific, so we don't go round in circles." And the other replied, "We're going to Novopogostov Boulevard." Karya practically jumped up. He slammed on the brakes and declared, "Well, fuck you, man, all over my face. I'm not going. Find yourself another driver." The passenger chuckled in the darkness and said, No. Why do we need another one? We've already found you, and you're suitable for us. So whether you like it or not, you'll have to keep working as a driver. Who am I suitable for, and who the hell are you? You're suitable, well, let's say, for the district administration. You know what district. And I, in a sense, represent the administration and, in relation to you in particular, your direct employer. Come on, use your brain, draw conclusions. It's time to stop beating around the bush and start calling a spade a spade. Our neighborhood is growing and needs new residents, and that means we need someone who will deliver them. Your Philharmonic explained everything to you correctly, but not completely. The neighborhood never let anyone go. And if you were able to move out, your soul still remains there. You're lying, Karya whispered. Why wouldn't I have noticed? And just think about it. Why did you abandon your principles? Where did your former conscientiousness go? You don't shy away from any kind of income, but you've turned to crime. Why have you become so greedy for money? Just don't tell me about the problems that have befallen you. You solved them long ago, but you still haven't given up your little affairs. Where does this unhealthy appetite come from? You yourself know that you have become completely heartless, but you are afraid to admit it to yourself. Karya grabbed his head and howled in terror, but it was too late to rush around. Meanwhile, the passenger continued. Don't worry, my friend. This is a familiar job, and you'll earn more than you ever dreamed of. After all, you're not the first, and you won't be the last. The Styx can't live without a ferryman. Wait, Karya was dumbfounded. So what's that? Exactly, the passenger nodded. Did you think you were crossing a regular river? I see you've read some books, right? That's it. So just think about the honor you've been given, ferrying people from the world of the living to the world of the dead. And you won't even have to change your name. Just drop 2 silly letters and you're Karaton. Now you're Karen, a ferryman or a taxi driver. It makes little difference. So stop whining, get to work. And if you work hard, who knows, maybe with time, you'll even be able to win your soul back. He said that, opened the door, and walked out. Then he turned and added, just don't try to run away or do anything stupid. Your car is now marked with the same seal as you are, so you won't get far from it, and you won't get far out of town in it. And then the terrifying passenger vanished into the darkness, melted away as if he'd never existed. And the newly minted Karen showed up at the taxi company the very next day with all his savings, bought the car, and quit. Since then, he's been driving his pitch-black taxi in the dead of night, picking up unwary passengers to take them forever to a wandering dead area beyond the River Styx. After 2 minutes of silence, I realized the story was finished, and the driver was waiting for my comments. Cool. And is all this supposedly true? I asked. It's the absolute truth. So where did all these details come from then? Who told me all this? That's Karya himself. After all this, he showed up a couple of times on the night shift, treated our guys to drinks, like he was totally enjoying himself. And he was discreetly trying to find a partner. But by then, our Philharmonic had already informed us all about Karen's plan. So, not a single idiot could be found to take Karen's place. And Karya never showed up again. What kind of plan is this? Well, it's all true. And what has he become? And how can those who don't know him recognize him in time? And how so? All the windows in his car, including the windshield, are tinted, and there's no light at all. But the headlights are blinding, like spotlights, blazing with a bright blue flame. With you, he'll pretend to be anyone, just to gain your trust. he always takes money first. He never asks for directions, but instead, he tries to take more and more drives through courtyards, like it's a shortcut, and he'll distract you in every way possible. Here's how to spot him. Just sneak a peek at his hands out of the corner of your eye, that is, with your peripheral vision. Then his true form will reveal itself, because his hands won't look human anymore, but like black bird feet, 3-fingered and with curved claws. If you recognize him, don't let him know under any circumstances. Instead, you need to ask him to stop under some pretext, to make a phone call or buy some cigarettes or something. And once he stops, turn the corner and run away from him through courtyards, sidewalks, and flower beds. He won't give chase, unless, of course, you look back. Got it? I see, I chuckled. Well, you sure did. What, you didn't like it? I know something else. About the hellish tow truck. Have you heard of it? If someone falls asleep in their car at night, the hellish tow truck shows up, hooks them up, and hauls them away. No, Dad, don't. Or about the cannibal traffic cop. Oh, come on. What's got you so worked up about? You're just like a camp counselor. Okay then, if you don't want to, so be it. Besides, we're already here. It's true what they say. Time flies when you're having a good conversation. I paid the chatterbox and without waiting for change, hopped out. The driver cheerfully honked his horn and sped off. With a sigh of relief, I lit a cigarette and only then realized that this scoundrel had missed my destination by a whole block. I cursed and walked along the road, trying to contain my irritation. It was only after I'd walked about 1 kilometer that I noticed something was wrong. My path couldn't possibly lead through a square, yet there it was, right in front of me, with some dark monument in the middle. I looked around and saw that there wasn't a single car on the road. Everything else was the same as everywhere else. Parked cars huddled on the curb, their lights flashing, trash, piles of dirty snow. But there was no traffic on the road. No one was walking on the sidewalks, no lights in the windows. Only streetlights dimly illuminated the unfamiliar square. A terrible thought sent a chill through my heart, but I merely shook my head. What nonsense, I said out loud. The last thing I needed was paranoia. We'll figure it all out soon. And I walked steadily toward the monument. But the closer I got to the monument, the less certain I was. Because in the darkness, the features of the statue began to become visible. It was a stocky, broad-shouldered, bearded man with deep-set eyes. His strong, sinewy hands rested on the handle of a heavy axe stuck in the ground. It can't be. Flashed through my mind. This can't be. It's just a coincidence. Now I'll figure out what's written there, and everything will become clear. On stiff legs, I approached the pedestal almost right up to it, but I couldn't bring myself to look at the inscription. It was too terrifying to have my suspicions confirmed. Finally, I raised my eyes to the pedestal, and with lips pale from the terrible realization, I read the sharply cut letters etched into the granite.